So Marissa is a friend of mine, and she currently is part owner in a pot shop, pot farm. I don't even know how you say this, factory in Boulder. So can you tell us a little just about you and your company and what you specialize in?
Yeah, so I've been in the cannabis industry for about 12 years. I had one of the first licenses in the state of Colorado for medical cultivation. And then my business has kind of branched out and evolved from that initial license. But pretty quickly after I got the cultivation license, I got a license to open and operate a medicinal dispensary as well. And I've been working very closely since the early stages of the cannabis industry in Colorado with a lot of the doctors in the Boulder area specifically that prescribe medicinal cannabis for patients for all types of varieties of situations and illness and chronic pain. And I've had a lot of experience with patients, direct experience with patients and helping them choose the right cannabis products for them based on their situation. We've developed some products. I've worked with some of the doctors to help develop specific products for patients that were suffering from like seizure disorders and all kinds of ailments that you could group into that category as well. And so my passion has mostly lied in the medicinal magic of the cannabis plants. And as you probably are both aware, I mean, the evolution of the industry has been pretty quick and pretty extensive over the last 10 plus years here in Colorado. There's been a lot of additional research and products that have come online even since when I first began. I mean, I kind of had an idea of where it was going to be going based on what I started seeing. And of course, it did develop sequentially, in many ways as I had predicted. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a beautiful medicinal alternative. I've helped hundreds of patients get off pharmaceutical prescriptions and replace with medicinal cannabis, which I think is so much easier and lighter on people's systems.
Yeah.
And great for overall health and wellness, pain management, of course, as well. But yeah, it's been a great journey. I mean, I've been really excited about being in the industry, and since then I have additional licenses that I've applied for. And now I'm recreational and medicinal as well. So we do recreational cultivation, medicinal cultivation, and then med and rec dispensaries.
So were you actually did you actually take part in kind of developing ratios of THC to CBD to help certain ailments and have the ability to manipulate that? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, before the cannabis industry had evolved up into that point, we were working more specifically with extractors and the physicians to kind of dial stuff in for people to develop the right ratio for them. Because sometimes it's a little bit of trial and error to see what works for that particular person. And sometimes that changes, that they'll use that for a couple months and that ratio will have to be modified again. Sometimes it stays consistent. So
How do you feel like the medical community in general has accepted this as a treatment? Is it few and far between the doctors that you've worked with? Have you had certain types of doctors kind of, be like, I don't want to be involved, hospitals? Like, what's been your experience there? Do they seek you out? Are you just kind of, what's the relationship?
yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the industry, in my experience, there was a couple designated physicians that were prescribing medicinal cannabis for patients, and those were the physicians that we were recommending that people would go to get their marijuana card in the state of Colorado. I know that there were some patients that were coming into my shop whose personal physicians were not on board with them consuming or being the one that actually prescribed the medicinal cannabis for that particular person. Whether it was mostly what I have seen that was, it was a personal, it was a personal preference of that physician to either prescribe or not prescribe. In those cases, those physicians weren't necessarily on board with prescribing. So we were working more closely with the physicians, obviously, that were seeing the medicinal value, and getting, becoming up to date on the latest and greatest as far as the research and the science, and then helping patients select the right types of medicinal products that were available in the industry at that point. I definitely think over the last 10 years, things have evolved immensely. I mean, so many more people are open to using cannabis for, all types of things from A to Z, not just pain management, but, stress management, anxiety, all kinds of things. There's so many things that some type of cannabis or some type of ratioed CBD THC product can help with. But I think that more and more people and physicians are open to the research and open to making prescriptions for that.
Are they still required to make prescriptions for that? Or can people just kind of come in and have you recommend what they need? Or how is it changed?
Yeah. So, I mean, medically, you still need a state issued medical card to come into shop in the medicinal dispensary. If you're over 21, you can shop in a recreational dispensary, and my recreational dispensary, purposely by my direction, carries a lot of medicinal products for those people that were not interested in either renewing their medical card or getting their medical card to begin with. So, my recreational dispensary still has a lot of those more medicinal style cannabis products available for sale. But if you're coming in, if you don't have a physician that you're working with, and you got a prescription from a physician, but you're not working specifically with a physician, my staff is educated on how to help you choose the right products for what you've got going on.
So does it matter? Like, can you across the board offer the same products now, since it's 10 years later?
Med and rec, you mean?
Yeah.
No, some products are still only available on the medicinal side, and a lot of that has to do with the regulation that's on how much the milligram dosages are. Those allotments are smaller and they're smaller dosages per serving on the recreational side. If you're shopping on the medicinal side, you still have access to higher milligram dosages per serving and per purchase through the medical products.
Gotcha. So Adam and Candy, do either of you feel that you have to get into that higher dosage arena, or are you able to manage your pain on the recreational side?
I can do it recreational. I had my med card for quite a few years, but I invested in some self-defense as a paraplegic, and you can't have a gun and a med card. You can't have both.
Isn't that a huge violation of rights?
It is.
Go buy as many cases of beer as you want, though. Take that thing,
right?
Run out partying with your buddies around the fire all weekend. But I think that's a huge violation of patients and rights.
So, especially if you are in a wheelchair, you're more vulnerable, and you have more of a need for medical marijuana potentially. That's just so not okay.
Yeah. You're like a million times more likely to have an accident with a gun on alcohol than marijuana.
Yeah, definitely.
And you could also be on Adderall or any other number of things as well.
Yeah, take that. It's a good point. Yeah.
You could be on the opiates. Yeah. Oh, I'm saying that wrong. You can tell I'm not a user of those.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. You can get it. You can have a gun with all those things, but God forbid you should be smoking a joint at home to relieve some pain and, have a firearm in your house.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Where do you see the industry going? Because I feel like I would like to address people that, are suffering with pain and getting released out of rehab hospitals and such, and having seizures from TBIs and clonus and spasticity and everything. I guess, we've been talking to Adam and Candy about how they just kind of started self-medicating and figuring it out on their own.
Yeah.
Obviously you're very educated and have been in this industry for 10 years and know a lot about medical benefits for people's ailments. But I can't imagine with all the dispensaries out there, is it pretty much across the board? You can go in and be able to start experimenting, or is there anything that you would advise to look out for, or to people in those shoes that they should be cautionate about?
I think my first caution would just be to start slow as you're adding anything into your daily regimen. Start in small increments with your whatever CBD or CBD and THC product that you might be integrating into your life. Start in small doses, and wait a couple hours before you decide whether or not you're feeling any effects. There's been, people, their metabolisms work differently. Their tolerance levels are different. Your tolerance level can be different even based on what you've eaten that day. So I might eat the same gummy 2 days in a row and have eaten something that had more fat in it, and my metabolism works quicker and I started to feel the effects faster. So I would say to start slower and integrate the product that you're trying more slowly into your life, and then kind of gauge from there. A lot of times it does take trial and error till you can figure out what works best for you and what ratio works best for you, whether that being something that's higher in THC and lower in CBD, or vice versa.
Have you had anybody have like an allergic reaction to it? Or, I know I often have the opposite effects with medication. Like if I were to take indica, I might get super jazzed up. Do you have any kind of statistics, or like, yeah, no, we've never had anybody allergic? Or
what do you mean by allergic?
Like literally have hives and anaphylaxis or any kind of reaction to marijuana?
Not from consuming it. I have people who worked in our cultivation facility who don't like to rub up against plants on their skin. They'll break out in hives. But as far as like side effects, or any like intense adverse reactions from consuming cannabis, no, I actually don't think that there's any recorded deaths of cannabis in the history of cannabis. You could probably research that, but as far as I know, there's been nobody's ever died. You can't really overdose on it. The one of the worst things that can happen, and I'm not saying that this wouldn't be unpleasant for somebody, is one of the things like you just shared. If I smoke an indica, it can make me anxious and give me too much energy. Definitely have had people who have had that experience, which isn't life-threatening. It might be uncomfortable, but it's not life-threatening. The other thing would be over consuming. So they're eating something, a gummy or a tincture, and not feeling the effects and thinking that they need to take more. And then all of a sudden the first dose is kicking in, and all of a sudden they're really over medicated, usually leading to some type of being overtired, being super sleepy and lethargic. In some cases, you can become anxious and paranoid. Usually that's higher THC. But really no major adverse reactions from cannabis consumption, which is why it makes it such a wonderful medicinal.
Yeah. What do you think the future of it is? Just curious.
I think that's a really big question, but I think it's a huge industry. Obviously, I think that Big Pharma and Big Brother are going to want to continue to keep their hands in it and regulate it. And I feel like just in the past 10 years, we've seen the development of so many wonderful products come online. We saw when I was first doing medical, idea of having ratioed products 2-to-1, 4-to-1, 10-to-1, 20-to-1, 100-to-1. Like we saw that coming a mile away, where people are going to be able to really dial in the perfect ratio for them. There's so many delivery systems now. I mean, tinctures, gummies, syrup, drinks, smokables of all different kinds. There's so many ways that you can deliver the medicine. And I think it's a huge industry. It's definitely not going anywhere. It's only becoming bigger. More states are adding either medical or medical and recreational cannabis into their legislation. Costa Rica just passed medicinal cannabis and hemp cultivation. This is a huge industry that's going to be continue to spread worldwide.
What is your opinion on doing it the old-fashioned way, ingesting it into your lungs versus the gummies and the tinctures and the drinks and the lotions and potions? And do you have any like input as far as the original organic way in the most even keel way to get it distributed fastest is by smoking it? I mean, what's your point to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the traditional smoking through a pipe or, rolling something through a paper. I mean, it's still a fast delivery system. It's not something that you're waiting, an hour to feel the effects of. It's pretty immediate, which allows you to kind of gauge on the spot. I mean, sometimes you could smoke something and, maybe not feel the euphoric effects right away, but within a few minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you're going to feel the effects of that. The other benefit of that is that you're getting a balanced experience of all the cannabinoids in the products by consuming it that way. Sometimes when companies are doing extractions, some of those terpenes and some of those cannabinoids are lost in the extraction process. Sometimes they're also, depending on what they're extracting for, it can enhance a tincture or an edible, depending on what they're trying to extract from the flower, basically. But yeah, smoking is a tried and true delivery system for those people who like to do that,
So for somebody that's getting out of a really massive trauma, like an SCI or TBI, and trying to get off all their opioids and everything else, your recommendation would probably be to start slow, small doses, and smoke instead of anything else.
I would say definitely starting small. I mean, if they're working with a physician who's seasoned in prescribing or directing to cannabis products, I would say that's a great line of support. If their physician is on board and can help them navigate those selections based on what their personal health challenges, that's definitely provides a really supportive experience for that person. If they don't have access to a physician who's on board, your local dispensary should be educated. The bud tender should be educated on helping you select some of the initial products for someone to try. Between smoking and eating a tincture, I would say it's up to that person. Some people don't like to inhale. They don't like to smoke. They don't want the smoke in their lungs. They don't want the experience of coughing. They don't want the smell in their house because they have kids, whatever it is. In those cases, starting with some type of tincture or edible would be a really great option.
I'm going to turn it over to either Candy or Adam. I know you have to go soon. Candy, do you have any questions for Marissa?
Actually do have a question. It just popped into my brain out of curiosity. Do you know what climate change is going to have an effect on the marijuana industry going forward?
That's a great question. And there's been so many studies that prove that the growing the hemp plant on our planet can heal and reverse the effects of climate change. So the cannabis plant actually takes in CO2 and expires oxygen, and it can actually, the more cannabis and the more hemp that we grow on the planet, the more healing that we're doing for the environment. Not to mention the 100 million uses for the cannabis and the hemp plant for all the raw materials, you know?
Right. So it's a good sustainable source.
So sustainable. I mean, you can grow a crop of hemp a couple times a year in the right climate. And all of those resources, all that raw material could be used for paper. I mean, it takes, 20, 50, 100 years to grow trees.
True.
So, and it uses less water. It's also an amazing nutritional. The hemp seed has a lot of vegan-based nutrition in it and can be used as a really viable protein source for people. Has more
Nice.
protein in some of the red meats and meats that we're eating, and the water consumption, the amount of water that it takes to get a pound of steak to your plate is ridiculous. It's hundreds and hundreds of gallons.
Mm-hmm.
So cannabis and hemp could literally heal the planet.
Cool.
That is
Good.
cool.
I'm making good choices together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What about you, Adam? Do you want to ask Marissa anything before we have to wrap up?
Well, I wanted to throw in also that I think that hemp-based battery is outperforming the graphene battery. It was the highest, battery technology. So
Wow, that's really cool. I didn't know that.
yeah.
Marissa, do you see on the horizon any kind of incorporation of, mushrooms taking on the same type of industry?
That's another excellent question, and I do think that that's right around the corner. I do.
And
I
what
mean,
would
I know
you
a lot of states are, go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I think a lot of states are coming on board with that. I mean, I know it's decriminalized here in Denver. You can have up to an ounce of psilocybin on you or some type of medicinal mushroom, no problem. I know a lot of people are looking at medicinal mushrooms for relieving anxiety and depression. I use them. I microdose every day. Love it. I think it's an invaluable natural source that can change a lot of people's lives. Medicinal mushrooms will also help you rewire your brain and turn on parts of your brain that aren't working. It also helps you to rewire the parts of the brain that are beneficial for staying in an elevated mood. So those are just a couple things. I mean, I use them personally every day. I take about a 0.2 of a gram every day.
So, and that's just, you just chew it up?
I grind everything up and put them in. I put them in my own capsules.
Gotcha. So for somebody, again, that is injured with paralysis or trauma in that way,
Mm-hmm.
do you think it's safe to use them together, mushrooms and marijuana? And then is there any more other specific use that you think it would be a benefit for physical trauma aside from controlling anxiety and do you think
Specific for mushrooms?
Yeah.
Again, I would say that's something that is not being prescribed by a lot of physicians right now. So you would want to work closely with somebody who has some experience or do some research. It's also really important to make sure that you know who's growing them, and that there's some really good intentions put into the medicine that's been grown, or get educated and grow them yourself. It's not too difficult. You need a really sterile environment, but it's not very difficult to grow them in your house. Again, starting super slow, because when you're overdosing on something like that, or you're experimenting with something like that, I think it's way better to start slower and figure out like what the desired effect is for you. Because if you are taking a larger dose of something like psilocybin, I mean, a larger dose of marijuana can impair you as well. I mean, you're not supposed to be driving cars on any of that stuff. The same thing with mushrooms.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was just going to say there's another interesting side effect that I've noticed in the spinal cord injury community is that our spasms go crazy. And, you know, I would really love to see more research on that, because I wonder if it is having the effect of helping our nerves grow. It's affecting our nerves somehow, for sure, because I've just seen it all across the community. I myself, you know, woke myself up out of bed because I was running in my sleep after microdosing. And so it's just like really crazy the effect it can have.
Yeah. The first thing that I thought of when she said it was rewiring your brain. If somebody wanted to start, you know, trying mushrooms to help with anxiety or anything, like where would you recommend that they even have that as a source?
You know, I haven't found an online source that I've trusted yet. It's really interesting because I was just looking online yesterday to find out if there was somebody in Colorado who had some type of online purchasing set up, since it's legal here in the you know, within the legal weight requirements. And I didn't find anything that was trusted. I mean, unfortunately, I have some friends who are in the mushroom cultivation business privately who are able to help me with that when I need to pick something up. But I would say networking through your existing friendships and relationships to find someone trusted who's got access to something. And there's so many different kinds. There's so many different kinds.
So you could get yourself into some trouble, right? Tripping pretty hard or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna get a you know, an ounce of mushrooms from your friend, I would definitely ask them what type and what their experience is with that particular strain. And then personally, I like to grind things up so there's more of a more homogeneous blend between the caps and the stems. It's all grounded up in one, you know, one mixture, and then capping out my own, so I know how much is in there. It's tedious.
Yeah.
But it's so worth
Do
it.
you have any input about your mushroom experiences?
What was that?
Adam or Candy, do you have
Oh, I'm
any
sorry.
input about your mushroom experiences? And then we'll probably wrap this up.
Yeah, I mean, that was just it, is that, you know, it really made my legs kick like crazy, which, you know, something like using the bathroom could become difficult because it could throw me off balance. So you would just want to be prepared, maybe have a caregiver or a trusted, you know, person there the first time that you try it. But I think that, you know, as the years go on and there's more research on it, and hopefully it can get legalized, and you know, you don't have to buy it through your friend, like thank goodness that's our weed case now. You know, that'll make a big difference.
Adam, anything?
I'm looking forward to seeing people pursue that more, because I've had situations where my pelvis wanted to shimmy all by itself for probably 5 or 6 hours straight with nothing I could do about it at all. And, you know, I was in a good mood while it was happening, but it was kind of inconvenient. But then there's been other times when it didn't affect me that way at all. And I think that it had something to do with how much I'd been stretching and how my bowels were even at that particular point in time. And, you know, how much exercise I had had, and, you know, how likely I would be to spasm otherwise, basically, you know. But I did notice a few times where I didn't spasm at all, and I was really surprised by that. And then I kind of, you know, going back to my schedule or whatever, I had been, you know, exercising a lot around that time, and, you know, my muscles were fatigued, so they weren't really tight and waiting to freak out. Everything was kind of mellow. So, but it would, you know, it would be cool to see some kind of, you know, scientific approach to that at some point. Because
so it doesn't sound like it's the best modality for the newly injured until you really get to know your body and what's going on.
I'd say it's definitely more problematic than cannabis in terms of how your body responds to it. More incremental there for sure, I would say. You know, my experience.
Well, before we wrap up, does anyone else have anything important that they would like to say that might be helpful to somebody that's listening to this?
I would say if you're in the Colorado, Boulder, Colorado area and you're looking for medicinals, come on into my store. It's called The Peaceful Choice. We've got an awesome medicinal selection. I also have an online website if anybody's looking for CBD products that don't contain any THC. I can send you the link to that, Susan, and you can share that with anybody. That's a really clean product that's third-party tested and able to ship all over the country and to some certain country, all over the US and then to some certain other countries in the world. I was looking for a CBD source to be aligned with where people who were looking for those types of products who didn't have them available in their area could get something. And this company that I've aligned with, I really enjoy. They've got some great CBD products. And then other than that, yeah, just like listening to your body. If you're trying something like this, it's a lot of times it can be trial and error, working with a physician if you have one that's local to you and on board. And yeah, that's
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, we'll definitely get that website on our resource page. And I appreciate all of you being here today. You
yeah,
each
thanks
are
for inviting me.
very near and dear to my heart. So
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
Thank you
you.
both, Adam and Candy.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great to hear from you.
Cool. Well, bye
All right,
guys. Let me know how I
guys.
can help in the future.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh,
All
thank you.
right,
See
see
you.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Okay.